Hi, welcome back. This is Beersborn. Let's take a look at where we are with our game so far. If I have the game open in Construct and I click the play button, this is what we can do. I can move my character around the screen and the running animation plays. In the last video, I set it up so if I press the space bar, my character shoots an arrow. We've created a system so that a projectile is spawned from our character and flies across the screen. But say we want to do another action. Say we want to have the character be able to swing a sword to attack enemies, or maybe they can pick up objects, or maybe they can throw a punch. We have to set it up so we can do close range attacks or close range interactions. And that's what we're going to do in this video. So let's close the demo. And let's take a look at our event sheet. We should have two groups. You should have a group for character movement that we made in the first couple video tutorials. And then we should have a group for character arrow that we made in the last video tutorial. What we want to do is start by taking an animation that we want to use for this attack or whatever this interaction might be and open it up in Piskel. Now, if you have an animation already made for this, that's perfect. If you don't, you can reuse the animation that we've done from, maybe the projectile attack. We can always change it later. That's totally fine. But I want to open up Piskel and I'm going to import my animation. Now, what I'm going to use for this is a digging animation. I have one called Goblin Dig here, and you can preview it. It's just my little goblin character, pulls out a shovel, digs a hole. I'm going to imagine that this is like an attack, like he's hitting things with his shovel. We want to export this. And if I go to the export button, the thing that I want to pay attention to is the size, the resolution, and the scale. Try to remember what scale you had your running animation and your projectile animation set to. It should be the same size. If it's not the same size, your character might get smaller or bigger when the animation's playing. So I recommend trying to recollect what scale you had it set to in your last animations. Mine's 512, 4x scale. And I recommend not going too much bigger than that. I think that's a good area to be in. You want to make sure the GIF is selected. Then you'll click the download button. I recommend saving stuff in your documents so we can find it easily. Name it whatever you want to name it, and click on Save. Great. Now let's go back into Construct. We're going to go to our layout. Remember, this is where we can see our game, right? So we can see our main character here. And what we're going to do is double-click on our main character, which opens up the animations editor. And if you look over on the right side window, we have all of our animations here. We have a standing animation, a running animation, I have a shooting bow and arrow animation. I'm going to add another animation in here. So I right-click anywhere in the white space, and I click on Add Animation. And I'm going to rename this one. Right-click on it, hit Rename. I'm going to call this one, I'm just going to call it Attack. I'm going to make this my attack animation. Now let's go over to the folder that's in the top left corner. It's called Load Images from Files. And if I click on that little folder button, I want to find the animation that I just exported. It should be in your documents or wherever you tend to save stuff to. Mine's right here. It's called Goblin Dig. Click Open, and there it is. I have my digging animation right here, frame by frame. And one thing that I would recommend is we should see how fast it plays. We can adjust the speed of the animation. If you right-click on Attack, you can preview it and see how it looks. Mine's kind of slow, right? It really just depends on how many frames of animation you have. And I have 6 frames of animation and I feel like the speed of 5 is a little slow. So I'm going to go down to speed. I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to make it, I'm going to try 12. Let's see how 12 looks. That's pretty good. There we go. And you can decide whatever speed you want. 12 might not be the number for you. Yours might look good at 5. So just decide what kind of speed looks good for your animation in particular. Once you have that though, we're all set. We can exit out of that window. Now let's go to our event sheet. What we're going to do is we're going to add a new event. If I click on Add Event and go to the keyboard, we're going to decide which key we want to press down to make this attack animation play. So let's go to Key is Down. Let's click to choose and decide what key you want to use for this. Now I use the space bar for shooting the bow and arrow, so I have to come up with some other kind of key. We can always change this later. For now, I'm going to do the X key. X is going to be my attack. Click OK. And click Done. So now what we have here on our event sheet is that it says, okay, when the keyboard X key is down, let's add an action. Let's go to our main character, and we're going to set the animation of that action. So if I start by typing in quotation marks, a list of all my animations come up, and I want to do attack. And click done. So when my X is down, the animation attacks. Perfect. Let's test it out. I can run around. I press the X. Good. Except that he's stuck in this weird pose, right? I have this weird frame of him like halfway through putting a shovel down. What we want to do is we want to make it so that when the attack animation finishes playing, he goes back to his standing pose, to a standing animation. So let's add another event. We're going to go to our main character. We're going to do on finished. What that means is like when this animation is finished, we can make an action take place. So the animation that we're using right now is attack, right? Click done. I'm going to add an action for that. So when the attack animation's finished, for my main character, I can set the animation to standing. Great. Let's test it out. Perfect. So again, key is down, animation begins. When the attack animation finishes, it goes back to standing. Great. Now let's go to our layout. What we're going to do now is we're going to add a new object into the game. To do that, if you remember, we would right-click anywhere in the white space of our layout. So I'm going to right-click over here. I'm going to click Insert New Object. What we want to do is we want to find where it says Sprite. We're going to click on it just once. Don't double-click it yet. Just click on it once. And the reason why I'm telling you to click on it once is that way we can name it before we leave the window. So let's name this. I'm going to call this Attack. I'm going to make a sprite that represents where the attack is taking place. I'm going to right-click anywhere in my layout. And for this, we're just going to make a square of color. There's not going to be any sprite, any graphic. It's just going to be a color square. So what we want to do is we want to click on the fill button. It looks like a little paint bucket. And you're going to choose a color. I'm going to do green. The color doesn't really matter. Ultimately, this square is going to be invisible into the actual game player. Or like when the game's actually being played by somebody, they won't see the square. So the color doesn't matter. But for now, it's going to be a green square. And I can exit out. Now I have this big green square in my layout. Now this square is going to represent an attack. It's what we call a hitbox. If you're familiar with the term hitbox, what that means is that it's where the game is checking to see if something gets hit. So imagine your character is swinging a sword. This hitbox is going to follow the sword, and if the hitbox ever overlaps with an enemy, it'll kill the enemy. Or say you have a character that can pick up a rock. The hitbox will follow the hand, and if it overlaps on top of a rock, it'll pick up the rock. So the hitbox is a way for Construct to kind of check to make sure when things are either coming in contact or overlapping in some way. Now this hitbox that we've made is very big. It's probably going to need to be smaller. It doesn't matter how small now. We can make adjustments to this later, but let's just shrink it down just so it's not massive. I'm going to make it about that big. And again, this is not an exact thing, but just shrink it down a little bit. What we're going to do is we're going to set it up so this hitbox is spawned by our main character when the attack animation is being played. So let's go to our event sheet. Click on Add Event. What we're going to do is with our main character, we're going to go to Is Playing. We're going to say that, okay, when the attack animation is playing, so we're going to use attack. I'm going to add an action. I'm going to say that my main character should spawn a hitbox. If you scroll down towards the bottom, you'll see spawn another object. We use this for the character projectile too, for the arrow. If I click on spawn another object, it allows you to choose an object that you want to have the main character create, what you want to spawn from your main character. We're going to do the attack hitbox. Now these other things we're going to leave alone for now. Click done. Now let's try it out. If I press play, I can hit down the X key, and I make a little green box. Now there's a couple things that aren't great about this. One is that the hitboxes just stay there, right? I'm just dropping little hitboxes around. And that doesn't really work. That's not how we want it. The other thing is the hitbox doesn't follow where the shovel is, right? The hitbox is just right in the middle of my character. Imagine that I have to hit an enemy with a shovel. We want the green hitbox to follow the shovel. We want it to be where the shovel is, not where my character's, like head is. And the other thing is if I hold down the X key and try moving around my character, it just slides around and leaves a trail of hitboxes. So we have some things we have to fix, but it's a start. So let's close that. The first thing I want to do is let's make it so the attack hitbox only spawns where we want it to. We want to make it follow, in my case, the shovel, right? Let's go to the layout and let's double click on our character. What we're going to do is we're going to use the image point. Now, if you remember, it looks like little crosshairs. It's a tool that's on the left side toolbar. Image points are specific points where we have other things spawn from. And right now we should have an origin. That's what lines up all of our character animations. Don't mess with the origin point. If you move the origin point, your character might jump around a little bit while the animations are playing. And if you do change the origin point, don't worry. I can show you how to fix that. It's a pretty easy fix. But don't necessarily move that. We also have the arrow, right? That arrow image point too. What I'd recommend doing is let's add another image point. Now we can go to our attack animation here and we can right click and we can hit add new image point. And we can name this one attack. The other one that we have for our shooting animation, I named it arrow. For my attack animation, I'm going to name this one attack. And let's right click on it and let's click to apply to whole animation. That way that attack hitbox image point will be on all the different frames. Otherwise you have to go through and do it frame by frame. So it makes sense to just kind of hit apply to whole animation. It'll be there for all of them. Now for this, what we're going to do is we're going to move the hitbox so that it's exactly on the shovel. My guy has a shovel, yours might have a sword or just their hands or whatever. So it's not going to be exactly the same for everybody's different animations. But just imagine where you want the hitbox to be. Where do you want the damage, if this is an attack, to be done? So in frame 0, I'm going to say, okay, I want the hitbox to be right on the shovel. And then for frame 1, I'm going to put it in the same place. My first couple frames are just him kind of putting the shovel in the ground. So the hitbox is going to stay pretty much right in the same location. But then in frame 4, it starts to fling up. So I can put the hitbox kind of in the arc of the movement of the shovel. In frame 5, I'm going to put out the tip of the shovel. In frame 6, he starts to put his shovel back down. So basically, in every frame, I'm taking that attack image point and I'm moving it to follow the shovel. Great. Let's close it. Now, if we press play right now, it's not really going to work. If I hit X, it still just pops up in the middle of my character. And the reason for that is because we have to do one more thing in the event sheet. Let's go back to where we have spawn attack on layer 0. If I double click on that, I can edit it. And we want to set the image point to our attack image point. Now, if you're going to type out the word attack, you have to use quotation marks. Basically, anytime we're using a name that we've created, you have to use quotation marks around it. So I'm going to do a quotation mark, attack, quotation mark, and click done. Now, if I play it and hit the X key, see how the attack boxes make like a little arc that follows the shovel? You can get really customized with that. If you can really kind of pinpoint exactly where you want the damage to be done in your attack. And if there's any enemies that happen to be overlapping where those boxes pop up, they'll be dealt damage or, they'll be interacted with in some way. Great. But we have to make it so these boxes don't stay here, right? We don't want all these hitboxes just floating around because now if an enemy just happens to bump into one, they'll die. And that doesn't really make any sense. We want the hitboxes to disappear when the animation finishes. So let's do that. We're going to add a new event. We're going to go to our main character. We're going to go to on finished. What we're going to do is say that, okay, when the attack animation is finished, we're going to add action. We're going to go to our attack hitbox. We're going to scroll down. We're going to find where it says destroy. Destroy means just get rid of it. So if I press play, the minute that the animation's finished, the hitboxes get destroyed. So they'll only do the damage while the animation is playing. Great. Now, eventually we're going to make these squares invisible because we don't want the player to actually see them, right? It's helpful for us to see it, to see where the damage would be happening, but we don't want to make them visible forever. So we have to make those invisible. The other thing we have to do is if I hold down my attack button and move the direction key, it still slides around and leaves a trail. So let's fix that. We've actually done something similar in the character arrow part, the projectile from the last video. So you might remember this, but let's add an event. We're going to go to our main character. We're going to say is playing. I'm going to say that while the attack animation is playing, I'm going to make it so all the character movement stuff, everything that's in the character movement group gets deactivated so that my character can't move while the attack animation is happening. Add action. And to do this, we have to do it in the system. Now, the system is just a bunch of kind of random things that are helpful in different situations. If you scroll up to the top, you'll see set group active. Let's click on that. And if you start by typing in a quotation mark, you get a list of the different groups we have. We have one for the arrow projectile. We have one for movement. We're going to use the movement one. What I'm going to say is set the state to deactivated, which means that while the attack animation is playing, all of the movement is deactivated. Great. Now, the only thing left to do is make sure that when the animation's finished playing, we make the character movement activated again. Otherwise, your player won't be able to move. So let's add event, main character, on finished, attack. So when the attack animation is finished, add action, system, set group active. We're going to go to our character movement. We're going to make sure it's activated. Good. Now try it out. If you press play, you should be able to run, and while you're running, you hit your attack animation. The character pauses to attack and then starts running again. And no longer does it just kind of slide around the screen. So we fixed that issue. Great. Let's see, is there anything else we want to do? I guess there's a couple small things. See how there's that hitbox that's just sitting in the middle of the screen when my game starts? We have to leave that in the layout somewhere, but it doesn't have to be right in the middle. And in fact, if you zoom out, and the way that you zoom out in Construct, you have to hold down the Control key on your keyboard and move your mouse wheel out. There's some other ways, but that's probably the easiest. You can see that there's like a gray area outside of your game's layout. We can drag anything we don't want to see outside. We have to leave it somewhere, but if we drag it out into the gray area, it won't be there really in the game when it starts. So that way we won't see it. And the last thing I would say is let's make it so the green boxes are invisible so that our player won't see them while they're playing. So let's do one last event. Click on Add Event. And for this, we're going to use the attack hitbox. We're going to click on Attack. And you want to scroll down till you see On Created. What that means is the second that the attack hitbox is created, we can add an action. With our attack box, we can set it to invisible. You see where it says set visible? It's down just a couple from the top, set visible. This gives you the option to either make something visible or invisible. Toggle just means like flip it on and off. So we're going to set it to invisible. So the second that our attack hitbox is created, the attack hitbox becomes invisible. And now you won't see them. You just know that they're there. And we can always make them visible again. You know, if you want to go back and see where they are, double click, set it to visible, and they'll pop right up. Great. Last thing before I let you go. Let's make a group to put all this stuff in. It's a good way to organize it. I think it's a good habit to get in. So let's right click and let's add a group. I'm going to call this group character attack. So I have character movement, character arrow, character attack. What I want to do is move all the stuff that we just made into the character attack group. Now, it's they make it a little difficult to move stuff. You want to make sure that you click on it from right where my mouse is. Do you see like the little tab that hangs out to the left? That's where you have to click and drag to move stuff. You don't want to click it here because that just drags the middle of it, and this part drags just that part. They make it very difficult in making sure that you have to click just from that left side tab. Now click and drag it down, and you can hover right to where it just says like add event to character attack and drop it in there, and you'll add it to that group. So I'm going to grab the next part of my events, click on or drag it and drop it on add event to character attack. Go through and do that with each of your events. Making sure that you're dropping it where it says add event to character attack. Great. Now we can minimize that. Very organized. And if we ever want to turn it on and off, we can. We can just right click. If you hit toggle disabled, that'll turn it off. Toggle disabled, turn it back on. And that's it. So now our character can shoot a projectile, can do some kind of other, maybe a melee attack of some kind. It's looking pretty good. If you ran into any issues, let me know. I'll help out and try to troubleshoot any questions that you might have in class. Thanks.